Beneath the heavy stone arches of the forbidden archives, the air hung thick with the scent of aged parchment and the faint metallic tang of ancient gears long since silenced. Elian moved carefully, his fingers grazing the spines of countless tomes as if coaxing secrets from their dusty slumber. The golden light filtering through narrow windows caught on motes of dust, scattering them like tiny stars suspended in the cavernous room. He paused before a leather-bound volume, its cover cracked and worn, embossed with symbols that shimmered faintly in the light, the emblem of the mechanical gods. "This is it," Elian whispered to Myra, who stood beside him, her eyes sharp and alert as always. "The history we've searched for." Talia, the archivist, adjusted her spectacles and stepped closer, her voice low but steady. "These pages tell a tale few remember of gods who were once craftsmen, much like your master Elian. Mortal men who dared to reach beyond the bounds of time and flesh." Elian's eyes flickered over the faded script, his mind racing to grasp the implications. But how could mortals become gods? They forged pacts with primal forces, binding their souls to intricate machines. Talia explained, her fingers tracing diagrams of clockwork constructs entwined with ethereal chains. In doing so, they gained immortality and power over time itself, but at a terrible cost. They became both protectors of the city's rhythm and prisoners of the very curse they helped create. The revelation settled over Elian like a cold tide. The mechanical gods were not mere symbols or distant myths. They were beings caught in an eternal struggle between duty and bondage. The clocks that ticked in every home, the heartbeat of the city itself, were manifestations of this paradox. Myra knelt beside a broken clockwork relic she had brought from their last expedition beneath the city. With practiced hands, she pried open the delicate casing, revealing a labyrinth of gears and tiny inscriptions etched with uncanny precision. "Look here," she said, pointing to a sequence of symbols that glowed faintly under her touch. "These inscriptions suggest the gods have weaknesses, hidden vulnerabilities encoded within their creation." Elian leaned in, hope flickering anew. "If we can find those weaknesses, perhaps we can undo the curse without destroying the balance." Talia regarded them both with a somber smile. "The path is perilous. To challenge the mechanical gods is to challenge time itself, but knowledge is the first step toward freedom." They spent hours poring over texts and artifacts, each discovery weaving a richer tapestry of the city's origins. The mechanical gods, it seemed, were once revered craftsmen who sacrificed their humanity to uphold the flow of time, forever intertwined with the magical timepieces that sustained the city. But their power was a prison, enforcing a curse that bound every citizen in chains of destiny. As the day waned, Elian found himself drawn to a massive mural painted on the far wall, a sweeping depiction of the mechanical gods towering above the city, their faces majestic yet sorrowful, eyes glowing with an eternal light. It was a haunting image that captured the duality of their existence, guardians of order, jailers of fate. He reached out, fingertips brushing the cold stone beneath the painting. "If they are prisoners as well," he murmured, "then perhaps there is a way to free them, and us all." Myra's voice broke the silence. "We need to prepare. The Chronarch will not take kindly to this knowledge." The weight of their discovery pressed heavily on Elian's shoulders, but beneath it stirred a fierce resolve. The secrets of the mechanical gods had been unveiled, and with them, the possibility of breaking the chains that bound the city. Yet, with every revelation came greater danger, and the shadow of the coming battle loomed ever closer. As Elian closed the ancient tome, a whispered tick echoed softly through the archives, as if the very heartbeat of the city acknowledged their newfound hope and the storm that was to come. But would the delicate balance hold, or would the unraveling of time itself be the price of their rebellion? The answer lay beyond the turning of the next hour. The city awoke that morning not to the familiar, soothing cadence of synchronized clocks, but to a fractured symphony of disarrayed, ticking and chimes that warbled through the streets like a broken melody. Ilian stood at the edge of the market square, his gaze fixed on a peculiar scene unfolding before him. A merchant stall, usually vibrant with the gleam of polished trinkets and the murmur of barter, now shimmered in and out of clarity. The wares flickered between pristine and cracked states in rapid succession, as though caught in the grip of some unseen force tugging on the threads of reality itself. Around the merchant, customers froze mid-gesture, suspended awkwardly between moments, their expressions caught in a tense mixture of surprise and unease. A ripple passed through the crowd, a collective shudder as the very air seemed to warp and pulse. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, then snapped back like the recoil of a tightly wound spring, distorting the familiar geometry of the city's cobbled streets and towering spires. Elian's heart thudded with a growing sense of dread. He knew this was no ordinary malfunction. The curse that bound the city to its enchanted clocks was tightening its grasp, and the consequences were spilling beyond the confines of hidden chambers and whispered secrets. "Look at that," Mira whispered, her voice taut with concern as she pointed to a sundial that cast a moving shadow at odds with the sun's path. Her dark hair, streaked with silver from nights spent toiling over forbidden mechanisms, caught the flickering light. "Time itself is breaking." Elian nodded, his soot-smudged hands clenched tightly. "We have to fix it before the fractures become irreparable." Inside the clockmaker's workshop, the heart of the city's timekeeping, the tension was palpable. The massive wall clock, a marvel of intricate gears and glowing runes, spun uncontrollably. Its hands whirled backward in frantic circles before jerking forward again, as if caught in a maddening dance against the natural order. Each erratic tick resonated through the room like the pounding of a drum heralding a coming storm. Elian crouched before the clock, sweat beating on his brow as he adjusted a delicate gear with trembling fingers. "Steady, steady," he murmured, the words barely audible over the cacophony of ticking. The air around him thrummed with a dissonant energy, warping the shadows and making the brass and steel of the mechanisms shimmer and blur. "You can't fix this by patching gears," Master Kaldor's voice cut through the chaos. The older man's gaunt face was drawn tight with worry, his silver hair tied back in a precise knot. "The very flow of time is corrupted. The curse is not a simple fault in a machine." Elian looked up, meeting his mentor's deep-set eyes. "Then what do we do?" Kaldor sighed, the weight of generations pressing down upon him. "We prepare for what's coming. The city's fate is no longer in our hands alone." Elsewhere, atop the ancient city walls, Myra surveyed the horizon. The sun hung low, its light fractured like stained glass through a mist that seemed to ripple with temporal distortion. Bells tolled from distant towers, their tones discordant and echoing in waves that stretched and folded upon themselves. The sky flickered in rhythm with the broken hourglass of the city's time. "This isn't just about the clocks anymore," Myra said quietly, her gaze steely despite the fear gnawing at her. "It's the entire weave of time unraveling." Back in the workshop, the ticking of dozens of clocks grew increasingly erratic, creating a symphony of instability that filled the air. Elian worked feverishly, guided by the meticulous notes he had kept since the first anomalies appeared. Each adjustment was a gamble, each turn of a cog a plea to the fragile balance. Suddenly, The workshop doors burst open. Jorin, the city guard captain, strode in, his armor clinking softly. His normally stern face was creased with concern. The city is in chaos. People are disappearing and reappearing out of sync. We need your expertise, Elian. Elian exchanged a glance with Kaldor and Mira. The battle to stabilize time was no longer confined to the workshop. It was a citywide emergency. As they hurried to plan their next steps, the air thickened with the weight of approaching calamity. Throughout the day, the temporal anomalies worsened. Streets folded back on themselves. Moments slipped away like water through trembling fingers, and the citizens' lives became a patchwork of disjointed moments. Elian's determination hardened. He was no longer just an apprentice or a curious tinkerer. The fate of the city, its people, and perhaps time itself rested on his shoulders. Yet, as the shadows lengthened and the clocks spun wildly into the twilight, a chilling realization settled in Elian's heart. The curse was not merely breaking the city, it was fighting back. And he was racing against a force far greater than any gear or spell. The chapter closes with Elian standing beneath the flickering glow of the central clock tower, the heart of the city's time. Its hands tremble uncertainly, caught between the past and an uncertain future. With a clenched jaw, Elian whispers to the restless gears, "Hold fast, we're not finished yet." And somewhere deep within the ticking labyrinth, the curse pulses in response, waiting for the next move in this fragile game of fractured hours. The workshop was cloaked in shadows, the only illumination coming from the soft, rhythmic glow of countless enchanted clocks lining the walls. Their ticking was a steady heartbeat, a pulse that had comforted Elian through years of apprenticeship. But tonight, the sound felt oppressive, like a countdown to an inevitable reckoning. Elian stood at the center of the room, his soot-stained hands trembling as he clutched a small, intricate timepiece he had been repairing. His eyes, usually bright with curiosity, were clouded with confusion and dread. Across from him, Master Keldor's gaunt figure loomed, his deep-set eyes shadowed by the flickering light. "Elian," Keldor began, his voice low and strained, "you don't understand the forces you're meddling with. The Chronarch's order is not merely about control, it is about survival." He paused, his gaze piercing. "You have to stop this madness." Elian swallowed hard, the weight of his discoveries pressing down on him. "But Master, the clocks are not just machines. They bind us, imprison us in a fate not of our choosing. We have to break free." Kaldor's face tightened, sorrow etched into every line. "I once thought, as you do, but there is a cost to freedom, a cost you're not prepared to pay. The Chronarch protects this city, even if his methods seem harsh. Without him, chaos would consume us all." The apprentice's heart ached. He had revered Kaldor, trusted him as a guide through the labyrinth of gears and secrets. And yet, here he was, pleading for caution where Elian saw only chains. Suddenly, the heavy wooden door burst open. Harsh footsteps echoed as Captain Jorin strode into the workshop, flanked by stern-faced guards. Their presence shattered the fragile silence like a hammer on glass. Elian Jorin's voice was cold. "You are under arrest for conspiring against the Chronarch and endangering the city's stability." Elian's eyes darted to Kaldor, searching for support, for an ally. Instead, the older man's expression was unreadable, a mask of conflicted duty. "I'm sorry, Elian," Kaldor whispered, stepping aside to let the guards advance. Betrayal crashed over Elian like a tidal wave. His breath hitched, disbelief freezing him in place as the guards closed in. Desperation flared, and with a surge of adrenaline, he wrenched free from their grasp and bolted toward the back exit. The city's labyrinthine alleys swallowed him in darkness. The cold night air bit at his skin, mingling with the sting of bruises and the bitter taste of betrayal. Every ticking clock seemed to mock him, counting down the moments until capture. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs faltered, finally collapsing in a hidden alcove where Myra awaited, her eyes wide with worry and relief. "Elian," she breathed, pulling him into a gentle embrace. "You're alive." He nodded, the weight of the night settling into his bones. "Kaldor betrayed me. I don't know who to trust anymore." Myra's fingers brushed a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "You still have me, and Sylvan. We'll fight this together." Hope flickered faintly amid the shadows of loss and fear. Elian's journey had changed irrevocably. The apprentice was gone. In his place stood a rebel, scarred but unbroken, ready to challenge the relentless march of time and the cruelty of fate. As dawn crept over the horizon, Elian's resolve hardened. The city's heartbeat would no longer be a chant, would be the drumbeat of revolution. But deep in the shadows, unseen gears began to turn, and the chronoc's grip tightened. The stairway spiraled downward, winding into the underbelly of the city, where the ceaseless pulse of time echoed through cavernous halls of metal and magic. Elian led the way, his footsteps light but purposeful, soot smudging the fabric of his worn apprentice's coat. Myra followed closely, her eyes sharp beneath streaks of silver threading through her dark hair. Every sense alert to the shifting shadows and distant clanks reverberating through the labyrinth. They had escaped the suffocating gaze of the city above, slipping past the watchful clockwork sentinels to enter the sanctuary. Few dared to remember the ancient clockworks, a sprawling underground maze of gears, pendulums, and arcane machinery, where time itself seemed to breathe and pulse in synchrony with the turning of colossal wheels. The air was thick with the scent of oil and damp stone, mingling with an almost imperceptible hum of dormant magic. Enchanted lanterns hung suspended from iron brackets, their amber glow casting intricate patterns across walls etched with faded runes, ancient marks left by the original clockmakers who had forged a pact with forces beyond mortal comprehension. Elian's eyes gleamed as he traced the delicate filigree on a brass panel embedded in the wall, feeling the subtle vibration beneath his fingertips. "This place, it's alive," he murmured, voice barely above a whisper. Myra nodded, pulling a slender toolkit from her satchel. "And it remembers everything. Every tick, every tock, every stolen moment." They ventured deeper, the labyrinth unfolding like a mechanical forest. Towering gears, some as wide as a man, turned with agonizing slowness, their teeth interlocking in endless, hypnotic patterns. Above them, the faint echo of water droplets mingled with the rhythmic pulse of the clockworks, a symphony of motion and stillness. In a cavernous chamber lined with brass and steel, Mira knelt beside a dormant contraption, a complex assembly of cogs, springs, and crystalline conduits. Her fingers danced over the mechanism with practiced grace, coaxing it to life. A soft click, then a gentle whir, as the ancient heart began to beat once more. Elian watched, breath caught in his throat, as the machine unfurled its secrets. Streams of light flowed through the crystal conduits, illuminating the chamber in ethereal hues. This could change everything," he said, eyes wide with wonder and hope. But the sanctuary was not without peril. A sudden tremor shook the foundations, dust cascading from the vaulted ceiling. Distant footsteps pounded a patrol of clockwork sentinels, their relentless march a reminder of the chronoc's ever-watchful presence. Myra's expression hardened. "We don't have much time." Together, they navigated the twisting corridors, evading shadows that seemed to stretch and flicker with unnatural life. weight of the city's fate pressed upon them, mingling with the thrill of discovery and the sting of impending conflict. Before they departed, Elian paused beside an ancient clock embedded in the wall, its hands frozen yet ticking faintly in the silence. He pressed a palm to its face, feeling the pulse beneath the metallar heartbeat intertwined with his own. "We're not alone," he whispered. "The clock remembers us, and it waits." With renewed resolve, they ascended from the depths, the sanctuary behind them a beacon of hope and a crucible of secrets. The war for time had only just begun, and the gears of destiny were turning inexorably toward the inevitable clash with the Chronok. As the first rays of dawn filtered through the city's spires, Elian and Mira prepared to face a future fraught with peril and promise, their hearts synchronized with the endless tick of the magical timepieces that both bound and could set them free. The underground chamber beneath the city pulsed with renewed energy. Flickering torchlight danced off the stone walls, casting elongated shadows that seemed to breathe with the crowd's restless anticipation. Sylvan stood tall on a makeshift platform, his sharp eyes sweeping over the sea of faces, men and women. Young and old, their varied garb, a testament to the many walks of life now united in whispered rebellion. "We stand at the edge of a new dawn," Sylvan declared, his voice steady but charged with fervor. "For too long, the Chronok's clockwork sentinels have held us in chains, binding our fates to a curse we did not choose. But the hour has come to reclaim our time, our lives. Together, we can shatter these gears that bind us and forge a future where destiny is ours to command." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, growing into a chorus of determined cheers. Elian stood near the back, his youthful face illuminated by the firelight, heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. Beside him, Mira's fingers twitched with restless energy. Her mind raced through calculations and designs that might give them an edge against the mechanical gods and the Chronok's forces. Meanwhile, far above the bustle of the underground rebellion, the city guard headquarters hummed with a different kind of tension. Joran, the captain whose unwavering loyalty to the Chronok had once been unquestioned, now found himself caught in a web of doubt and disquiet. His broad shoulders sagged slightly as he whispered in the dimly lit office, conferring with a handful of officers who shared his unease. "The city can't hold like this," Joran said quietly, his voice rough with frustration. "The Chronok's methods are breaking us from within. We're meant to protect order, but at what cost?" A younger officer's eyes flickered with nervousness. "You're treading a dangerous line, Captain. Loyalty to the Chronok is law." Joran's jaw tightened, the weight of his decision pressing down like the heavy gears of the clocks that ruled their lives. "Perhaps it is time for a new order," he murmured, a reluctant resolve settling in his gaze. Back in the hidden depths of the city, Elian and Mira pored over blueprints and tinkered with delicate clockwork devices. The workshop was cluttered with cogs, springs, and half-finished inventions, bathed in the soft glow of candlelight. Mira's nimble fingers deftly adjusted a tiny mechanism, eyes narrowed in concentration. "If this functions as I hope," she said, "we can disrupt the Sentinel's control just long enough to strike at their core." Elian nodded, his mind alight with possibilities and risks. "It's a gamble, but it's one we must take. The city's fate depends on it." As the days turned to nights, secret meetings unfolded in the labyrinthine tunnels beneath the city. Rebel leaders gathered with disillusioned guards in hushed tones, sharing intelligence and strategizing under the relentless ticking of distant clocks. The air was thick with a blend of cautious optimism and the ever-present shadow of fear of discovery, of betrayal, of the Chronok's wrath. Yet within this fragile alliance, A spark of something unbreakable began to kindle, hope. The chronarch, perched in his towering citadel of shifting gears and glowing clock faces, watched these developments with cold calculation. His mask of interlocking cogs betrayed no emotion as he summoned his enforcers. "The rebellion grows bolder," he intoned, "but so does my resolve. We will tighten the gears until the city no longer trembles, until time itself bends to our will." And so, as Sylvan's resistance swelled and Joran stepped cautiously into the fold, the city braced itself. The delicate balance between order and chaos teetered on a knife's edge, and the coming storm promised to reshape destiny itself. Elian stood at the threshold of this upheaval, the weight of leadership settling heavily upon his shoulders. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but the promise of freedom, however uncertain, was a beacon he could not ignore. The clocks ticked on, relentless and eternal, but for the first time in generations, their rhythm was challenged. The rising resistance was no longer a whisper in the gears, it was a roar, and the city would never be the same.